You have one lunar cycle to prove you deserve to be lunar. The Alpha King's ultimatum wasn't a challenge, it was a death sentence. The entire pack waited for the lowborn Omega to fail. They never expected her to solve the feud that had crippled them for 100 years. She was Ilara, an Omega with no name and no lineage, given an impossible test by the man destiny said was hers. The entire Silver Fang pack saw only a servant girl, a flaw in their royal bloodline to be erased. But her trial would expose a far deeper sickness, a land bleeding from a 100-year war and a curse rotting their strength from within. The real question wasn't if she would survive the month. It was if the pack was worthy of the queen they had already found. Her world was one of silent corridors and lowered gazes. Ilara's days began before dawn in the scullery, washing the elders' china, and ended long after midnight, mending ceremonial robes in a windowless closet that served as her quarters. She was the pack's living ghost, the daughter of border guards who had died in a rogue attack, her existence tolerated only because of her parents' sacrifice. She had no rank, no voice, and until the moment her eyes met Alpha Kalen, across the bonfire during the last full moon, she had no future. The mate bond had snapped into place with the force of a thunderclap. For her, it was a revelation, a terrifying, glorious sense of coming home. For Kalen, it was a political disaster. The Alpha King, a ruler who had unified 5 fractious clans through sheer will, was bound to an Omega with dirt under her nails and the scent of soaproot on her skin. The pack elders, led by the venomous Elder Marcus, moved immediately. A queen must be of pure, noble blood, they decreed. A queen must command respect, not charity. Their pressure was a vice around their king. So in the stone circle under waning moon, Kalen gave her the choice that was not a choice. Prove your worth in one lunar cycle, or the bond will be severed, and you will be cast out. The pack watched, their scorn a palpable heat. They saw a frail girl trembling before her king. They did not see the mind that had, for years, quietly managed the pack's failing granary stores, stretching meager supplies through harsh winters. They did not see the eyes that had studied every ancient treaty in the archives while cleaning them. Her first test was not of strength, but of survival. She was moved from the servants' wing to a sparse room in the royal wing, a gilded cage. Her meals were delivered late and cold. Whispers followed her like shadows. The head guard, a brutish wolf loyal to Elder Marcus, forgot to post sentries at her door, leaving her vulnerable to the night's dangers. But Ilara did not cower. She used the isolation. While the pack slept, she walked the territory's edge, not with fear, but with a surveyor's eye. It was on one of these secret walks that she found the first thread of the century-old conflict. The Blood Fang pack, their ancestral rivals, claimed the eastern forest. The Silver Fangs claimed the river that ran through it. For generations, they had fought and died over the blurred line. Ilara stood at that disputed border, not seeing a battle line, but a pattern. The skirmishes always flared in late autumn, regardless of leadership or treaty. She tracked the scent markers, old and new, and found them layered over something else, a deep, forgotten mineral scent emanating from a particular granite ridge. Meanwhile, the curse of the bloodline was not just a story. Kalen's warriors, the mightiest in the land, were weakening. Pups were born frail. The pack's healing magic, once legendary, now barely closed a scratch. The elders blamed a spiritual failing, a punishment for some ancient sin. They preached ritual and purity. Ilara, tasked with cleaning the healing den, saw the physical truth. She catalogued the symptoms, not random illness, but a precise, creeping failure of the blood that mirrored an account she had once read in a discarded herbalist's journal from a time before the war. With 14 days left in her cycle, the elders staged their first public challenge. A contingent from the Blood Fang pack arrived, arrogant and demanding tribute for stolen river access. Tension crackled in the Great Hall. Kalen's warriors bristled, ready for a fight that would claim more of their dwindling strength. Elder Marcus smiled, expecting Ilara to flee from the aggression. Instead, she stepped forward, not toward the rival Alpha, but to a weathered map on the wall. She pointed to the granite ridge on the map, her voice clear in the stunned silence. You do not fight for the river's water. You fight for what the water carries from this stone. This isn't a territorial dispute. It's a mining claim. The rival Alpha's sneer vanished. For 100 years, both packs had spilled blood, blind to the vein of sacred moonsilver ore that ran beneath the ridge, an ore that slowly seeped into the watershed, vital for Shifter's strength. The war was based on a forgotten truth. The revelation created a temporary, shocked truce. In the pack, whispers of luck began to mix with the scorn. Kaelin looked at her not with warmth, but with a flicker of dawning, unsettling curiosity. The servant girl had seen what generations of alphas and warriors had not. But Elder Marcus was not defeated. He simply changed tactics. If she could not be shamed into failure, she would be led into danger. He granted her access to the deepest archives to research the bloodline cure, directing her to a sealed vault said to hold the answer. He knew what was guarded there. As the moon cycle reached its final quarter, Ilara entered the vault, seeking a cure for her king's people. She found not a scroll, but a tomb, and chained within it, a feral, ancient beast that should have been extinct, a creature whose very breath was said to carry the original curse. The door sealed behind her with a final, echoing thud. The beast in the vault was not a monster, it was a mirror. Its eyes, glowing with a pained, ancient light, held not mindless rage, but a profound, locked-in agony. The creature, a massive wolf with fur like tarnished silver and chains of black iron biting into its spirit, did not attack. It flinched from her, whining low in its throat. The curse wasn't in the air, it was in the metal. Ilara saw the truth not with her eyes, but through the newly awakened mate bond, a bond she now realized had been quietly attuning her to the pack's deepest sickness. The iron chains were not just physical. They were spiritual, leaching a poison of weakness and rage into the very stone of the citadel, into the land, and into the bloodline of the Silver Fangs. She didn't have a weapon. She had the soaproot in her pocket, a humble herb she used for cleaning. It was also a mild spiritual purifier. With a calm she did not feel, she approached, singing the old lullaby her mother had sung, a melody forgotten by the nobles but remembered in the servants' halls. She rubbed the soaproot over the black iron links. A hiss of dark smoke rose. The beast shuddered, and for a moment, the agony in its eyes cleared, revealing a shocking intelligence and a familial resemblance to the portraits of the first Silver Fang Alpha. The door exploded inward, not with rescue but with the furious roar of Alpha Kaelin. He had felt her terror through the bond and come, a storm of claws and fury, ready to rend the beast apart. "Stop!" Ilara screamed, throwing herself between them. "She is not the curse. She is its first victim. This is Lysandra." The tale was a lie. The curse was a prison. A founding Alpha's sister, bound in rage and iron by a jealous rival centuries ago, her tormented spirit slowly poisoning her own lineage. Kaelin froze, the truth striking him with more force than any claw. The elders, led by Marcus, arrived then, their faces masks of pious horror. "You see, the Omega consorts with the source of our blight. She has awakened its full fury." But Kaelin looked from the chained, weeping form of Lysandra to the desperate defiance in Ilara's eyes. For the first time, he did not see a problem. He saw a witness. He ordered the vault sealed, with Ilara and the beast inside, but with a new command: find the key, not to the door, to the chains. With 7 days left, Ilara worked in a frantic, sacred solitude, communicating through touch, image, and the bond's empathy she learned from Lysandra. The black iron was void metal, mined from the very ridge disputed with the blood fangs. It required a counterspell woven from 3 things: moonlight captured in pure silver, a voluntary drop of blood from the current alpha, and the true name of the one who cast the binding. The first 2 were difficult. The third was impossible, lost to history. But Ilara's mind, trained in ledgers and logistics, saw a pattern in the archives she'd cleaned. She cross-referenced supply manifests from the time of the binding with lunar charts and genealogy scrolls. The answer was not in a grand grimoire, but in a shipping invoice for specialty ore and a marriage record annulled in secrecy. The binder wasn't a rival Pack Alpha. It was a Silver Fang elder, a spurned suitor of Lysandra's named Aaron, who had used the newly discovered void metal in a twisted ritual of possession. When it backfired, binding her instead, he wrote the tragedy as a curse to hide his crime. His true name was etched on a forgotten foundation stone beneath the Great Hall. Now she had to convince Kaelin. Emerging from the vault, pale but radiant with purpose, she was met not with gratitude but with a tribunal. Elder Marcus had acted. He declared her tainted by the cursed beast and demanded immediate severance of the mate bond for the king's safety. The pack, fearful and superstitious, murmured in agreement. Kaelin sat on his throne, Torn between the bond he could feel singing for her and the weight of his pack's terrified eyes. Ilara did not plead. She presented evidence like a general laying out a campaign. She showed them the invoice, the annulment, the geological survey linking the void metal to the ridge. The territorial war was a cover for the source of their own poison. The cure for their bloodline was not a ritual, but a mining dispute and a name on a stone. The hall was utterly silent. Then a young warrior, one whose pup had been born frail, stood. "I will follow her," he said, "to the ridge and to the stone." It was the first crack in the wall of her opposition. Kalen made his choice. He stood, his aura flaring not in anger, but in absolute command. The trial continues. We go to the ridge at dawn, to end a war and break a chain. The journey to the disputed territory was tense. Bloodfang scouts tracked them, howling warnings. The Silverfang warriors, their strength sapped by the curse, marched with grim determination, flanking Ilara not as a prisoner, but as a strange, newfound asset. At the granite ridge, they faced the Bloodfang Alpha, a grizzled wolf named Rourke, and his full war party. Kalen stepped forward to parley, but Rourke spat on the ground. "We talk when the river runs clean of your weakness." Another battle was seconds away. Ilara, ignoring protocol, walked past her own king, holding up a chunk of ore she'd taken from the vault. "You fight over this. It is poison. It has been poisoning my pack for generations, and it is why your hunters grow sick when they drink too long from the eastern tributary." She broke the ore in two, showing the ugly black void metal core within the silver. "We don't want this mine. We want to destroy it." Rourke stared, his certainty crumbling. His own healers had whispered of a strange sickness. The century of war pivoted in that moment, from a fight for resources to a shared mission of survival. A tentative, shocked alliance was forged over a mutual enemy, the poisoned stone. Working together, the packs excavated the main vein. There, at the heart of the ridge, they found the source, a pulsating core of void metal, and beside it, etched on a primordial slab, the true name of Aaron. Ilara prepared the counterspell. Kalen offered his blood without hesitation. Under the light of the gibbous moon, she spoke the lost name. Back in the Citadel vault, the black iron chains shattered into dust. The beast form of Lysandra melted away, revealing the graceful spirit of the Alpha Sister, finally at peace. As she faded, a wave of palpable healing energy washed through the stone, through the land, and through every silver fang wolf. Warriors felt strength flood back into their limbs. Healers found their magic restored, vibrant, and potent. The pack erupted in disbelieving joy. The Blood Fang pack, witnessing the healing, formally agreed to a true peace, one based on shared stewardship of a cleansed land. Ilara had done the impossible. She had solved the unsolvable war and healed the incurable curse. But Elder Marcus's face in the cheering crowd was a mask of icy fury. His power, built on mystery and fear, had just been unraveled by an Omega with a piece of soaproot and a ledger. The public trial was over. She had won. Yet as the sun set on the 28th day, with the lunar cycle complete, Marcus approached the throne. His words were honeyed poison, a magnificent feat indeed, but the ultimatum was clear: prove she deserves to be Luna. Solving external crises is one thing. The true test of a Luna is the loyalty of the pack itself. Does she command it, or was she merely a useful tool in a moment of need? Let the pack speak. Let them choose their queen. He turned to the assembled wolves, his voice ringing out. "Who here will swear fealty to the Omega? Who will bow to a queen with no bloodline?" The joyous celebration died. An uncomfortable, heavy silence descended. The warriors looked at their feet. The elders smirked. The cure was welcome, but tradition ran deeper than gratitude. The final, most cruel test had just begun. It was no longer about deeds. It was about the heart of the pack she had saved, and whether it was too poisoned by pride to accept its own salvation. The silence was her answer, a wall of averted eyes and clenched jaws. Ilara stood in the center of the great hall, the healing energy of the freed spirit still warm in the air, and felt a colder chill settle in her heart. She had given them their strength back, their future, and their peace, but tradition was a heavier chain than iron. Elder Marcus's smile was thin and victorious. "You see, my king, gratitude is fleeting, leadership is eternal. She may be clever, but she is not one of us." Alpha Kalen watched, his own loyalties tearing him apart. The bond screamed at him to defend her, to force their submission, but a king who rules by force alone is a tyrant. He had set the terms of the trial. He was trapped by his own decree. Ilara met his gaze, and in her eyes he saw no plea, only a deep, weary understanding. She had known this would be the hardest part. Then a young she-wolf, Anya, the one whose mate had been healed of the blood wasting, stepped from the crowd. Her voice trembled but carried, "I owe her my family's life. I will swear." She moved to kneel, but her father, a grizzled captain, grabbed her arm, hissing a warning. The tension snapped. Before another word could be spoken, the outer alarms blared, a raw electronic shriek overlaid with the ancient howl of the perimeter sentries. Rogues, a massive force, hitting the eastern gate. The hall exploded into chaos. Warriors scrambled for weapons. Elder Marcus pointed a bony finger at Ilara. "You led them here. Your alliance with the Blood Fangs was a ruse to weaken our defenses." It was a masterstroke. In the face of an external threat, fear and prejudice united instantly and against her. Kalen had no choice. To protect the pack, he had to assume command of the defense. He locked eyes with Ilara, a silent apology, and roared orders, marshalling the warriors away. She was left standing alone in the suddenly empty hall, with only the glaring elders and a few terrified Omegas for company. The attack was ferocious and coordinated, targeting the precise section of the wall that had been undermanned due to the curse. But Ilara, listening to the battle reports shouted by runners, noticed something wrong. The rogues weren't trying to breach. They were probing, testing, creating chaos. This wasn't an invasion. It was a distraction. While the pack fought the phantom threat at the gates, the real strike came from within. The vault where Lysandra had been kept was breached again, not by an enemy, but by Elder Marcus's personal guard. Their goal wasn't theft, it was contamination. They planted void metal shards taken from the ridge into the citadel's foundation stones, aiming to reignite the curse and make it seem like Ilara's cure was temporary, a trick that had doomed them all. Ilara, acting on instinct, had not gone to the walls. She had gone to the archives, to the shipping manifests. She cross-referenced the rogue attack's timing with lunar cycles and trade routes. The rogues were using branded weapons, tools traced back to a merchant company secretly owned by a shell corporation. She followed the financial trail, using skills honed in the pack's accounts, and hit a wall named in the ledgers as M Holdings. The M was for Marcus. The scope of the betrayal widened, turning from cruel politics into outright treason. The rogue attack was a paid mercenary strike. The century-old curse, it had likely been subtly maintained, not just inherited. Marcus needed a weak pack, a pack perpetually in crisis, to maintain his control through fear and ritual. A strong, healthy pack led by a true alpha and a clever Luna had no need for his poisonous counsel. Armed with this knowledge, Ilara didn't go to Kalen. He was busy defending a lie. She went to the people. She gathered the Omegas, the healers, the cooks, the stable hands, the unseen network that truly kept the pack alive. She showed them the ledger entries, the weapon markings, the location of the newly planted void metal shards. She didn't ask for loyalty to her. She asked for loyalty to the pack. "He is making us sick to prove he is the only healer," she said. "Will you let him poison your children again?" This was the countermove Marcus never anticipated. He saw the pack as a hierarchy. Ilara, who had lived at its bottom, saw it as an ecosystem. The workers moved. Quietly, swiftly, they located and removed the planted shards. They intercepted messengers. They spread the truth through the servants' tunnels, and they isolated Marcus's loyalists without a single clash of steel. On the walls, Kalen found the rogue attack, dissolving as mysteriously as it began, the mercenaries retreating into the night after achieving their paid-for chaos. Returning to the citadel, he expected to find Marcus consolidating power and Ilara disgraced. Instead, he found a different scene. The Great Hall was full, but not of warriors. It was filled with the entire pack, from the youngest pup to the oldest cook. They stood in a loose circle. In the center stood Ilara, calm, and opposite her, held not by guards, but by the firm hands of the head cook and the head healer, was a seething Elder Marcus. Between them on the floor lay the void metal shards and the damning ledgers. Ilara spoke, her voice addressing the pack, not the king. The threat was never out there, it was here, a sickness of the spirit wearing elders' robes. He traded your health for his power. He sent your sons to die in a fake war over poisoned land. She turned to Kalen. "My king, the pack has spoken, not with oaths of fealty to me, but with actions to save itself." The evidence was undeniable. Marcus, cornered, spat his defiance. You are all fools. She is nothing, a low-born witch who has twisted your minds. But his words rang hollow in a room where the healed stood strong, and the cooks who fed them stared him down. Kaelan finally understood. The test was never for Elara. It was for him and for the pack. Would they cling to the poison they knew or choose the healing they feared? He had been tested, and he had wavered. The pack, led by its most humble members, had passed. He walked to Elara, the bond between them a clear, shining thread in his soul. He did not speak to her. He turned to his people. You ask who will bow to a queen with no bloodline? He then did the unthinkable. Alpha King Kaelan, conqueror of 5 clans, went to one knee before the Omega. I will. The gasp was universal. Then the young warrior who first spoke for her knelt. Then Anya and her healed mate. Then the head healer, the cook, the stable master. A wave of motion, a rustle of cloth and a clink of armor swept through the hall as pack members, one by one, bowed their heads and bent their knees, not out of forced tradition, but out of earned respect. They weren't bowing to her lineage. They were bowing to her proof. Elder Marcus, witnessing his entire world inverted, gave a strangled cry of rage. But the trial was over. The lunar cycle was complete. As the first rays of dawn touched the high windows, illuminating the kneeling pack, and their king bowed before her, Elara understood the final, brutal truth. She had not just proven she deserved to be Luna. She had proven they deserved to have her. The real reign was about to begin. In the silence after the bow, a new world was born. The first to rise from his knee was Alpha Kaelan. He did not return to a throne that now felt like a relic. Instead, he offered his hand to Elara, and together they turned to face their pack. The gesture was simple, but its meaning echoed through the hall. They would rule side by side, or not at all. His first act as a king who had been humbled was to pass judgment on the man who had tried to poison his reign. Elder Marcus was stripped of his title, his robes, and his pack mark. His fate was not execution, but exile. Elara insisted. Let him live in the world he tried to create, one of isolation, suspicion, and barren power. He would be cast beyond the borders, his name struck from the records, a ghost in a land he had no connection to. As he was led away, sputtering curses, the pack felt not anger, but a collective exhalation, as if a long-held breath of toxic air had finally been released. The following days were a whirlwind of intentional change. The tentative peace with the Blood Fang pack was formalized in a ceremony not at the border, but at the heart of the now-cleansed ridge. Alpha Rourke and Kaelan signed a treaty, but it was Elara and Rourke's daughter, a sharp-eyed hunter, who drafted its most innovative clause, a shared guardianship council. Wolves from both packs would rotate patrols, not to guard against each other, but to protect the land from the scarring effects of deep mining. The century-old dispute ended not with a victor, but with stewards. Within the Silver Fang Citadel, the changes were more profound. Elara dissolved the old Council of Elders, replacing it with a pack circle. Its seats were filled not by bloodline but by function, the head healer, the head of defenses, the head of provisions, and for the first time, a representative of the Omegas and the junior warriors. The first Omega representative was Anya, the she-wolf who had first spoken. Governance became a conversation, not a decree. The healing of the bloodline was immediate and visible. Within a week, 2 frail pups in the healing den took their first strong steps. The pack's magic, once a flickering candle, now burned like a forge fire. The healers discovered they could not only cure but enhance, drawing on the clean, potent energy of their restored territory. The curse became a lesson, not a legend. Kaelan and Elara's bond, no longer source of conflict, solidified into an unshakable foundation. He learned to value her mind as much as his own strength, consulting her on everything from trade routes to judicial matters. She learned to trust not just his protection, but his partnership. They were not Alpha and Luna as separate entities, but 2 halves of a single ruling force. His strength became her shield, her clarity became his compass. On the first moon of her official reign, Elara instituted the First Light Gathering. At every dawn, any pack member, from the youngest to the oldest, could bring a concern or idea directly to the foot of the Citadel steps where she and Kaelan would stand. It was a symbol of accessible leadership. The first to use it was a grizzled old hunter who complained about the state of the Western trails. By sundown, a work crew was repairing them. The most surprising detail emerged from the deepest archives. uncovered during the reorganization Ilara had ordered. A sealed scroll, hidden behind the stone where Aaron's name was found, told the rest of Lysandra's story. She had not been just the first Alpha's sister. She had been his co-ruler, his strategic mind, his equal. Her binding and erasure from history was not just an act of jealous love, but a deliberate rewriting to remove a powerful female leader from the pack's memory. The curse on the bloodline was, in part, the curse of operating at half strength for generations, of missing the wisdom of its other half. Ilara read the scroll in the quiet of the new royal chambers, a spacious suite of rooms with windows facing the mountains. Kaelin watched her, seeing the weight of the revelation settle on her. She was not an anomaly, she was a return. She was the missing half, not just of him, but of the pack's very soul, finally restored. The final piece of the old world was addressed with quiet ruthlessness. The network of merchants and shell companies Marcus had used to fund the rogue attacks was systematically dismantled, not through violence, but through economic and social pressure applied by the allied packs. The Hale global equivalent in their world found its assets frozen, its reputation ruined. The message was clear: the old, shadowy ways of power were obsolete. As the seasons turned, the Silver Fang Pack, now in alliance with the Blood Fangs, became a regional power of a new kind, a stable, healthy, and innovative community. Their strength attracted others, not through conquest, but through example. Trade flourished. New pups were born strong, and a generation grew up knowing the story of the Omega Queen not as a fairy tale, but as recent history. One evening, standing on the same balcony where Kaelin had once given her his cruel ultimatum, Ilara looked out over a thriving, lantern-lit territory. Kaelin wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her head. "You know," he murmured, his voice filled with a warmth that once seemed impossible for him, "I spent my life preparing for every threat beyond our walls. I never saw the one festering within our own heart." Ilara leaned back into him. "You weren't meant to see it. You were the strength, I was the sight." She paused. "The ultimatum, it was the best and worst thing you ever did." "It was," he agreed, his arms tightening. "It forced the pack to look at you, and it forced me to look at myself." He turned her to face him, his amber eyes serious. "The test was always mine. Would I be a king who ruled by tradition, or one brave enough to follow truth, even if it knelt in a servant's dress?" She kissed him, and the mate bond sang between them, a perfect, harmonious chord. The trial was over, the proving was done, but the work, the joyous, collaborative work of building a future worthy of their difficult beginning, was just getting started. The pack had bowed to its queen. Now, together, they rose. So, what does the tale of the Omega Queen truly reveal? It's more than a simple reversal of fortune. It's a blueprint for how broken systems heal. The pack was dying from a triple sickness: a physical curse, a pointless war, and a spiritual rot that valued pedigree over merit. Ilara, cure wasn't just a spell or a treaty, it was a new way of seeing. She proved that the most profound strength isn't always in the claw or the howl, but in the mind that connects disparate threads, in the heart that serves without seeking glory, and in the courage to stand in the silent hall and let your work speak for you. The Alpha King's ultimatum was the catalyst, but the transformation was communal. The pack didn't just get a new Luna, they got back a missing piece of their own soul. They were reminded that loyalty earned is infinitely more powerful than loyalty demanded. The bow at dawn wasn't an ending. It was a collective choice to become something better. This story echoes beyond the fantasy. It asks us to examine our own packs, our communities, our workplaces, our families. Who are we overlooking? What curses do we tolerate because we're too focused on external threats to see the poison within our own traditions? And when we are tested, do we have the courage, like Kaelin, to kneel before a difficult truth? Ilara's journey from the silent scullery to the throne room teaches us that worth is not given, it is demonstrated. And sometimes, the person being tested is not the one standing alone in the circle, but every single person watching, deciding whether to cling to the familiar past or reach for a transformative future. If you were captivated by this story of hidden worth, ruthless politics, and hard-won redemption, you can keep the adventure going. Dive into more tales of underestimated heroes and shocking power shifts. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Let me know in the comments below, What was the moment you knew Ilara had not only won her trial, but changed the pack forever? Thank you for watching. Until next time.